None of you noticed, but it was a wig the entire time. Hey there, kids, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, a night elf mohawk, hoping that you guys are having a great day. And in today's video, I'd like to sit back, relax, and talk about nostalgia, actually. You see, earlier today, after I woke up, but before I decided to cut my hair, I was thinking about one of my favorite cartoons from way back in the day, Mummies Alive, which is, if you haven't watched it, I seriously recommend that you do. It is phenomenal in my opinion. Some good animation, typical Saturday morning cartoon shenanigans, good fight scenes. All of the major characters are understandable and relatable. They're all fun. I had a lot of fun with it. In fact, of the cartoons from my childhood, I think Mummies Alive is the one that most deserves a continuation. But I suppose that is neither here nor there. While thinking about Mummies Alive, I was like, you know what? I am an adult with money that I could choose to spend how I wish. I wonder if Mummies Alive had any toys or anything from back in the day that I just never knew about. And it turns out that it does. Kenner, which is a toy company that most people don't talk about anymore for some reason or another. They did in fact make a line of Mummies Alive action figures. Mummies Alive action figures. Mummies Alive action figures. Wow, my mouth is... it's working as good as my hairline. So, of course, I took to eBay to check them out and see, what I'd have to spend. I didn't buy any today, but I was just kind of curious, what I would have to end up spending to get, at the very least, all the four main mummies. And for most of the action figures from the Kenner line, it was, $20 to $40 for, which is to be expected, for a action figure that's over 20 years old, 20-ish years old these days. But I couldn't help but notice I was going through the eBay listings. One of the mummies, Nefertina, I think her name is. I couldn't find, it didn't show up when I just typed in Mummies Alive action figures. And I was curious, like, she was the only female mummy. Did she just not get an action figure? No, that was not the case. When I tightened the search to just look for Mummies Alive Nefertina action figures, it turns out she did get an action figure. And that while the rest of them had action figure prices, even sealed, for between $20 to $40. Her loose figure is over $200 or $300, and the only sealed one I saw on eBay was over $3,000. And boy, did that number hit me like a freight train, because I'm of the opinion that I'm like one of 12 people on the planet who even know that this cartoon exists, let alone would be willing to spend any kind of money on its merchandise. But I guess I was wrong, because for a toy of that era to hit that price tag, even sealed, is quite an impressive feat. If you guys don't know anything about the collectibles and vintage toy market, let's just say that a lot of toys, especially from the late 90s, early 2000s, they have not appreciated as well as some people would have hoped, in part due to their mass-produced status. It's much easier to get those toys, especially at the time. Even the ones with fairly limited availability windows, like some McDonald's toys that were in high demand even back then, are surprisingly cheap these days for what they are. Look at the Matoran Bionicles. The sealed bags for those are like $50, which is a lot, but also not a lot when you consider how in demand they were and how small their release window is, if you take all things into consideration. It's been a topic on online forums for a while now. I remember people talking about it 10 years ago, in fact, of toys from the 90s and the fact that they just haven't really seen a massive increase in value. There are outlanders, there are outliers, obviously, but for me, just looking at this toy from a cartoon that I was familiar with hitting a $3,000 price tag, I was whoa, that's crazy, it's insane. I don't think it's going to sell at $3,000, but hey, you do you, pal. I'm seeing if loose copies can sell for 200 plus, then I'm not entirely surprised by a $300 price tag. I would need to see the sale, you know. But this brings the conversation into an interesting direction. Okay, as you guys may or may not be aware, currently as of the time of this video, there is a bit of a bull run when it comes to TCGs, and a lot of people are bemoaning the state of the TCG market and how certain products are inflated in price compared to contemporaries from even 2 years ago. And I would just like to point out that that's not necessarily exclusive to the TCG market, the TCG world. A lot of niche hobbies and a lot of niche collectibles, as I was reminded today, are going to have diehard fans that are going to be willing to go out of their way to collect and spend exceptional amounts of money on them for one reason or another. Maybe I'm just unaware, but maybe this particular mummy figure is actually fairly rare for what it is. You know, maybe it had a much smaller release window compared to the others, to the point where it's actually genuinely hard to find sealed. You know, maybe I'm just misinformed. But when you look at, you know, people like to look at Beanie Babies, and people like to talk all this good shit about how worthless Beanie Babies are, because it's true. The average Beanie Baby, especially from the original wave, the original version of Beanie Babies, the average Beanie Baby from back then, even to this day, is worthless. You know, you're lucky to get a few bucks for them. But there are still standouts. There are still outliers. There are still examples, even within failed markets, of items that are still genuinely desirable. And I think it's important that whenever you examine a corner of the collectibles market, a corner of the, whether it be card games, toys, video games, etc., it's imperative that you avoid making general statements or making a general assumption about that market in general. Just because you'd be surprised the value you can find there. Earlier today, I was convinced that it would be relatively, I thought it was going to cost me like $120 to get the full set of these Mummies Alive figures, because I was like, okay, these are going to be all cheap. I'll spend $120 and just put them on display somewhere, right? Well, I was dead wrong. And of course, that didn't affect me all that much. I just ended up not making the purchase. Doesn't hurt me one way or the other, but there can be times, there can be situations where you make a general assumption about the corner of the market, and there's money on the line or money on the table. There is opportunity that could be done that you lose because you have made an assumption based on either incorrect or missing information. Either because you came to a generalization without looking too much deeper into it, or because the information you have was either out of date or just outright wrong. And understand that a lot of people who are just getting into collectibles in the last 6 to 12 months, they're making a lot of assumptions right now about the state of the market, the health of the market, and the desirability of certain items out there right now that may or may not be experiencing unnatural price growths simply due to the current bull market nature. Nature of the bull market. There we go. So really, there's no lesson with this video. Just be careful. You know, when you are looking at anything in particular, it's important that you judge critically and examine critically the items you are willing to park money into, the investments you're willing to make, and always learn as much as you can, figure out as much as you can, because sure, it's easy to come to a quick it's easy to do what I did like earlier today, where you come to a quick assumption about a product or a product line and just prepare to make a decision based on that, only to be, you know, only to learn that you're wrong. And sometimes there's no consequences, but sometimes there could be consequences. Sometimes you could make it a purchase thinking that sometimes you'll buy something, especially what's the MTG Finance speculative investment? Is that the phrase that the MTG Finance bros like to use? You'll buy a lot of copies of a single card for one reason or another, thinking that it's going to go up in price without getting the full picture, without really learning as much as you can about that card and its availability, its synergy, collectability, whatever. And you'll find that that one card or that one product, whatever it is, you know, isn't actually as desirable or valuable as you think, Or the opposite, you sell something thinking that it's not really that desirable, and you lose money on that sale just because you weren't willing to figure out what its actual price was. I don't know really where I'm going with this other than, damn, I really wish I could afford all the Mummies Alive figures. That would be nice to have. I like that show a lot. That's the real theme of this episode. Go watch Mummies Alive. It's very good, I promise. It has a banger theme song. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Do you like my new haircut? Do you think I look like a carrot? I think I kind of look like a carrot. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you kids next time.